Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. We talked a little bit about the presidential campaign, but not much this week, and I wanted to go a little deeper, and so I got a great political consultant here on the program, Steve Parkhurst. He is very well-versed, very politically savvy, an old friend of mine, and we've been talking and working together on various things for a long time. He's one of the people that helped me create the national news website, usdailyreview.com, and he does a weekly feature called Across the Pond, which is the longest-running feature on usdailyreview.com, and frankly, one of my favorite features on any news site anywhere, because he really figured out early on that if you get that perception of what's going on in England, and what he does is he looks at the British newspapers and brings those stories. It's kind of like a window into the future. It's kind of pretty cool what you got going there. I like it, and it's good to talk to you, Steve.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me on.
Talk a little bit about what you're doing as far as the races you're working on. Just a quick overview.
Yeah, so we're doing a little bit of everything. We're involved in some federal races, which usually means congressional, presidential, or U.S. Senate. We've got some of that action, though, although we're not involved in a presidential campaign directly. And then a lot of local races in various parts of the country. We're in a few different states, Florida, Missouri, here in Texas, different parts of Texas. So California. So we're staying busy. Got a little bit of everything this year.
Yeah, very good. Talk a little bit about the presidential campaign. I know you have a lot of interest in that. I know that you sound like, from our conversations, somewhat of a Marco Rubio fan. He did horrible last week. On Monday rather. I mean, that was sad.
Yeah, it was. It was, and you're right. I do support Marco. It was interesting. Governor Christie came out at that debate on Saturday night and really went after Rubio for sounding robotic and for repeating the same stuff over and over. And then Rubio didn't respond well to it, and he paid the price on Monday or on Tuesday up there in New Hampshire. And he looks like he's kind of learned his lesson, and he's back on the ground in South Carolina now, kind of recovering and kind of back on track. So. Seems like he realized immediately what his problem was, and one of the problems with the way the field is right now, and I understand cross-examination is good, but you have when you get 9-10 candidates on a stage, and then one of them wants to go after whoever the guy, maybe not necessarily the front runner, because Donald Trump was just way too far out in the lead for anybody to really go after him, so everybody started a position for number two. And so, a couple guys ganged up on Rubio, and then his numbers dropped, and it's just a weird way the game is played. And it's for some people, if you have a specific candidate, it can be viewed as unfortunate, but otherwise it's just the way it is. And you either find the people that can recover the best and move on, or you just suffer with whoever just keeps piling up delegate numbers.
Yeah, no question about it. Rubio has had, until that debate, was, I think, the strongest debate performer. Him and Ted Cruz, I think, were the strongest debate performers, even though the numbers showed that Donald Trump was winning these debates. That's because these people are like, this is almost like a personality cult following Donald Trump. And so it'll be interesting to see how Marco Rubio bounces back. Of these, in terms of professional debaters, Ted Cruz is the only true professional debater in that group. I think my theory is as the field narrows, the harder it's going to be to debate Ted Cruz.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I can see that. I can also see where once you get into a little bit more, again, as we say, as the field has narrowed. I mean, we lost two more people yesterday, and maybe more in the coming days. As that field narrows, yeah, it could be that it's easy for Cruz, and Cruz, you're right, is a great debater. I mean, it's just he's just a very skilled politician in that way. He's a very skilled individual. But it could also these debates just hinge on what the questions are, who's asking the questions, and then who the questions are directed to. And the other night on the Saturday night debate, you had the moment where Bush kind of had a rise, I guess you could say, a bit, not to steal from his PAC right to rise at all, but he had that moment where he was going at Trump, and Trump did the shush thing, try to keep him quiet, and that was one of the two times Trump got booed that night. So you just never know how these things are going to go. If you could get serious just policy debates, then you're right, Ted Cruz would probably win, but that's just not what these things turn into these days. These things are such a bizarre sideshow sometimes with all the theatrics and the what candidate is doing what, and when you've got 9 people up there on a stage and you're trying to grade all 9 of them, it just becomes a free for all. And so you're right. I'm interested to see what happens as the field narrows and we have fewer people up on that stage.
Yeah, the key word there is sideshow. Is that one word or two? But anyway, it definitely does get bizarre. But the field is narrowing, and I'm expecting Ben Carson to pull out any day now. And so it's going to become more narrow, even more so. So, but let's kind of do a quick inventory. There's 6, right? Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Ben Carson, John Kasich, and I'm missing one. Who am I missing? Oh, Jeb Bush.
Yeah.
And so do Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio try to trudge on all the way to Florida?
I think so. I think they both view that as a favorable, home turf, and it could be that both are delusional and neither one knows which one, whose home turf it really is. But yeah, I think they both at least survive to Florida.
Or at least trudge on. Who knows whether or not survival is the right word. Is Florida one of the March 1 primaries?
I believe it is, yeah. Super Tuesday along with Texas, and I think 16 states vote that day.
It's wonderful that Texas matters again. It really is wonderful.
Yeah, first time in a really long time.
Long time.
2008, John McCain was the nominee before we got a chance to vote, and in 2012, Romney was the nominee before we got a chance to vote. So it'll be nice that Texas will actually have a voice this time. And there's actually the debate. There's a debate on the February 25th, I believe. It's going to be in Houston. So they haven't had a Texas debate in quite a while either.
Yeah, who's doing that debate? Do you know?
Ever since they pulled it away from the NBC affiliates, I'm not sure that they ever. I think they just kind of kept saying, "Well, the debate's going to take place," but they don't know who's carrying it yet. So I don't know that I've seen who's going to carry that.
I got to figure out how to get into that place. Anyway, talk a little bit about the. So in Florida, who do you think wins in Florida? That'll be interesting. I mean, Jeb Bush is almost ancient history by Florida standards. I would think that Marco Rubio would have some currency. I also think that a lot of Floridians are angry at Marco Rubio about his attitude towards his responsibilities in representing them in the U.S. Senate. I know I would be.
Yeah, it's a very fair vote, or a very fair point. And, Rubio and actually Ted Cruz they both took a little bit of time off the campaign trail yesterday to go to D.C. to cast votes. And so you're right about, Jeb Bush kind of comes across as ancient history there in Florida. At least you have to think that way. And then, there's a lot of things kind of starting to circulate or recirculate, I guess you could say, from 2010, where Jeb Bush talked about how great Marco Rubio was going to be for Florida. And Rubio's there now. I don't know if you've seen on the newsstands lately. There's a Newsweek issue with Rubio being bashed about global warming and or so-called global warming, and it talks about how the people in Florida are not happy with him because of supposed sea level rise. And I'm not debating the premise of all of that. It's just the fact that they're throwing this stuff out there and trying to make Rubio look bad, which is, he's from Florida, and yes, the story was about Florida. That could have a negative impact. At the same time, when you get these fields where you have so many candidates, I mean, just like with the presidential contests in general, I mean, if you look at Ted Cruz, I think he won Iowa with 34% of the vote. I mean, that's what happens when you have so many people in these races, is that you start to minimize the number of the percentage of vote that you've got to get. So you could have Bush and Rubio go in there and both get 20% and look really good, and then somebody else comes in and maybe gets 25% or 30% and blows them away. So I would say Rubio has the advantage. Especially he doesn't have to kind of rebuild name ID right now or anything like that. He's been the senator. He's had constituent services for the last 5.5 years. So I would say he's a favorite going in. But again, if the field remains somewhat crowded, I could see anybody taking that.
Mm-hmm. Talking again to Steve Parkhurst. He is a political consultant. By the way, Steve, your website?
It's the business name is American Renaissance Political Consulting Group, and so we shortened that because that's a really long name. To AmRen Consulting. Yeah, so it's just amrenconsulting.com.
amrenconsulting.com. We're going to continue our conversation with Steve Parkhurst. We're going to talk a little bit more. My question for you, don't answer it now, Steve, but after the break, who's going to be the next candidate to get out of this race? I'm going to let you speculate on that and much, much more. I do want to remind you the show continues 24/7 at priceofbusiness.com. Great audio, video, and so much more. Plus, make sure you check out my national TV show this Sunday on the Biz TV Network. More for you after this.